The emergency session alarm echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Federation's High Council chambers. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in their environmental pods, each one designed to sustain the unique atmospheric needs of their homeworlds. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as translators worked overtime to process the rapid exchange of fearful conversations. High Counselor Vex High, a tall blue-skinned Altarian, stood at the center podium. Her normally calm demeanor was replaced by visible distress. The holographic display behind her showed a devastating image. 3 entire star systems reduced to nothing but floating debris and strange, dark crystal formations. "Fellow counselors," Vex High began, her voice trembling through the universal translator. "We face extinction. The Void Swarm has consumed the Kepler 186 system completely. 15 billion souls gone in 72 hours. The chamber fell silent. Even the Zephyrians, known for their constant chittering, stopped their nervous sounds. The hologram shifted to show tactical reports from the Federation's military forces. Red markers indicated destroyed fleets, while yellow ones showed retreating vessels. There were very few green markers left. "Our military response has been inadequate," continued Admiral Thane, the Federation's top military strategist. His rock-like granite heritage made his words sound like grinding stone. "The swarm adapts faster than we can develop countermeasures. They turn our own weapons against us. They consume our ships and use the materials to grow stronger." The Void Swarm had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of Federation space. At first, they seemed like another minor threat. Small, crystalline creatures that consumed metals and energy. But they learned. They evolved, they grew. What started as bug-sized parasites quickly became ship-sized predators, then planet killers. Dr. Mel Andre, the Federation's leading xenobiologist, activated her presentation. "The swarm doesn't just destroy," she explained, her tentacles moving in distress patterns. "They learn from every encounter. They study our tactics, our technology, our biology. Each battle makes them stronger while making us weaker." The hologram showed swarm creatures adapting in real time during battles. They changed their crystal formations to deflect energy weapons. They modified their biomechanical ships to resist Federation technology. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to understand Federation psychology, targeting civilian populations to create maximum fear and confusion. "How many systems have we lost?" asked Counselor Yeth, his insectoid features clicking in agitation. 17 systems confirmed consumed, Admiral Thane replied. 23 more under active attack. Our best estimates suggest we have perhaps 6 months before they reach the core worlds. The chamber erupted in panicked conversations. Some species called for immediate evacuation of their homeworlds. Others demanded that the military find a solution. A few suggested surrendering and hoping the swarm would show mercy. "Silence," Vex High commanded. "Panic will not save us. We need warriors. Real warriors. Not our peacekeeping forces, but beings who understand true warfare." This statement caused another uproar. The Federation had been built on principles of peace and cooperation. Most member species had evolved past their violent phases millennia ago. Their military forces were designed for defense and peacekeeping, not the brutal warfare now required. Dr. Melandre spoke again. "I've been analyzing the swarm's behavior patterns. They respect only one thing: superior force applied with tactical intelligence. Our current military philosophy of minimal violence and protective engagement plays directly into their adaptation strategies." "What are you suggesting?" asked Counselor Bremmel, her gaseous form shimmering with concern. "We need to find species that still remember how to wage war. Real war. Species that haven't evolved past their violent tendencies." Dr. Melandre's tentacles moved in uncomfortable patterns. "We need Deathworlders." The term sent a chill through the chamber. Deathworlds were planets where evolution had been so harsh that survival required constant violence, adaptation, and aggression. The Federation had only encountered a few such worlds, and contact had been difficult. Admiral Thane accessed his strategic database. "Our records show only 3 confirmed Deathworld civilizations with spacefaring capability. The Corlex of Sigma Draconis, extinct after their homeworld was consumed by stellar collapse. The Vorthak Empire, destroyed themselves in nuclear warfare 2,000 years ago. And," he paused, checking his data again, "and the humans of Sol 3, designation Earth." The chamber fell completely silent. Everyone had heard of Earth. Their radio transmissions had been monitored for decades, though contact had never been established. The content of those transmissions had been classified at the highest levels, deemed too disturbing for general galactic knowledge. Dr. Melandre activated another hologram. Based on their electromagnetic transmissions, humans appear to be a species that has weaponized their own entertainment. They broadcast what they call movies, detailed recordings of warfare, survival scenarios, and combat situations that other species would consider psychological warfare. The hologram showed clips from human movies, explosions, gunfights, soldiers charging into impossible odds, individuals fighting massive creatures with primitive weapons. To the gathered counselors, it looked like documentation of a species that thrived on violence. They have something they call extreme sports, Dr. Melandre continued. Activities where individuals voluntarily place themselves in mortal danger for entertainment. They jump from flying vehicles with cloth parachutes. They fight each other in organized combat for recreation. They climb mountains that could kill them just to reach the top. Counselor Vexhai studied the data with growing hope and horror. Their planet classification? Deathworld Class 12, Admiral Thane replied. Gravity 1.4 times Federation standard. Atmospheric pressure at dangerous levels. Weather patterns that include city-destroying storms, ground-shaking seismic events, and temperature variations that would kill most Federation species. The planet itself seems designed to create survivors. But are they civilized? Asked Counselor Yeth. Do they have space travel?
Can they be reasoned with?
Dr. Melandre nodded. They have achieved limited spaceflight and have established colonies on nearby planets in their system. Their transmissions suggest a complex society with multiple governmental structures. Most importantly, they have something called military forces, organized groups specifically trained for warfare. The chamber buzzed with a nervous conversation. The idea of contacting a Deathworld species went against every Federation protocol, but the alternative was extinction. High Counselor Vexhai called for order. The choice before us is simple. We can maintain our principles and face extinction, or we can reach out to beings who might be able to help us survive. Admiral Thane brought up tactical projections. Our analysis suggests that without intervention, the swarm will reach the core worlds within 6 months. Our current military forces have a projected success rate of less than 3% against swarm forces. The vote was close, but survival won over principles. The Federation would send a message to Earth, requesting military assistance against the Void Swarm. They would offer technology, resources, and territorial rights in exchange for humanity's help. As the session ended and representatives returned to their homeworlds to prepare for possible evacuation, Dr. Melandre remained behind studying human transmissions. She watched recordings of humans fighting impossible odds, surviving in deadly environments and sacrificing themselves for others. What have we done? She whispered to herself, her tentacles trembling. We asked for warriors, but what if we've invited something even more dangerous than the swarm? The message to Earth was prepared with careful diplomatic language, but the core request was simple. Help us fight. Help us survive. In return, we offer you the stars. The transmission began its journey toward Sol 3, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire galaxy. Behind it, the Void Swarm continued its relentless advance, consuming everything in its path, unaware that the Federation had just contacted the one species in the galaxy that might actually pose a threat. Earth would receive the message in 3 months. The galaxy's fate now rested in the hands of Deathworlders. The Deep Space Monitoring Station in Chile detected the signal at 3:47 a.m. local time. Dr. Sarah Martinez was halfway through her 3rd cup of coffee when the computers started screaming alerts. The signal was unlike anything in their databases, clearly artificial, but using mathematical concepts that suggested non-human intelligence. Director Chen, you need to see this, Sarah called out, her voice echoing in the underground facility. Director James Chen rushed over, still pulling on his jacket. What are we looking at? He asked, studying the scrolling data. It's a message, definitely alien origin. The computer's been working on translation for 6 hours now using the mathematical primer they included. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she pulled up the preliminary translation. Sir, they're asking for help. Military help. Within 12 hours, the message had been verified by monitoring stations across the globe. The translation improved as more computing power was applied to the task. The full message was clear. An alien federation was facing extinction from something called the Void Swarm, and they wanted Earth to send warriors. The emergency session at the United Nations was unlike anything in human history. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York, while screens displayed the translated alien message. The room buzzed with dozens of languages as diplomats tried to process the impossible situation. Secretary General Elena Rodriguez stood at the podium, her usually calm demeanor showing cracks of stress. Ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer alone in the universe, and apparently we have a reputation. The message had included samples of Earth's radio and television broadcasts that the aliens had intercepted over the decades. Action movies, war documentaries, extreme sports, military training footage. Everything that humans considered entertainment, the aliens interpreted as evidence of a warrior species. General Patricia Hayes, representing the combined military chiefs, activated a holographic display. According to the alien data, this void swarm has already destroyed 17 star systems. Their military forces have suffered 90% casualties in direct engagements. They're facing total extinction. The Chinese representative leaned forward. And they want us to fight their battles? How do we know this isn't some kind of trap? Because 3 days ago, one of their scout ships entered our solar system, announced Dr. Lisa Park from NASA. It's currently in orbit around Mars, making no aggressive moves. They're waiting. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. Some nations wanted to ignore the aliens completely. Others saw an opportunity for technological advancement. A few worried about Earth becoming involved in an interstellar war. President Williams of the United States finally stood up. The question isn't whether we should help. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we don't. These beings face extinction, and they've come to us for help. But why us? Asked the British Prime Minister. What makes them think we're warriors? Dr. Park activated another display showing clips from human media that the aliens had intercepted. To them, our entertainment looks like training footage. Our sports look like combat preparation. Our disaster response looks like military operations. They think we're a species that thrives on conflict and danger. The room fell silent as representatives watched footage of humans climbing Mount Everest, fighting in boxing matches, responding to earthquakes, and serving in combat zones. Seen through alien eyes, humanity did look like a species bred for war. The Brazilian delegate raised his hand. Even if we agree to help, how many soldiers can we realistically send? Our militaries are designed for Earth-based conflicts. General Hayes consulted her notes. The aliens are offering significant technological assistance. Faster-than-light travel, advanced weapons, medical technology. They can transport and equip a force of up to 1,000 personnel. 1,000 soldiers against an enemy that destroyed 17 star systems? The French representative sounded skeptical. Not just soldiers, Dr. Martinez spoke up from the technical consultation area. I've been analyzing their request more carefully. They're not just asking for military personnel. They want warriors. But their definition seems broader than ours. She activated a presentation showing human activities that the aliens had flagged as significant. Emergency responders running into burning buildings. Mountain rescue teams working in impossible conditions. Doctors performing surgery in war zones. To them, anyone who regularly faces death to help others is a warrior. This realization changed the entire discussion. Earth wouldn't be sending just soldiers. They'd be sending the best of humanity's emergency responders. Special forces, extreme sports athletes, disaster relief workers, and medical personnel. The vote was closer than expected but passed by a significant margin. Earth would provide military assistance to the Galactic Federation. However, the specific nature of that assistance would be uniquely human. Colonel Sarah Chen was selected to lead the expeditionary force. Her background in special forces, disaster response, and international cooperation made her an ideal choice. Dr. Marcus Webb, an emergency trauma surgeon with experience in conflict zones, was chosen as chief medical officer. Jake Morrison, a professional extreme mountaineer who had served as a military advisor in hostile environments, became the tactical survival specialist. The selection process for the rest of the force was unlike anything in military history. They weren't just looking for soldiers. They wanted individuals who thrived in impossible situations. Firefighters who ran into burning buildings, paramedics who worked in active war zones, search and rescue specialists who operated in avalanche conditions. deep-sea welders who worked in crushing depths, bomb disposal experts who approached live explosives with steady hands. Each volunteer underwent psychological evaluation to ensure they understood the risks. This wasn't a deployment to another Earth location. This was interstellar warfare against an enemy that had already proven capable of destroying entire civilizations. Maria Santos, a veteran paramedic from São Paulo, was one of the first to volunteer. "I've pulled people out of collapsed buildings during earthquakes," she said during her interview. "How different can it be pulling them out of spaceships?" Tech Sergeant Mike Anderson, an explosive ordnance disposal specialist, had a similar attitude. "IEDs, alien death machines, explosive is explosive. You just have to stay calm and think your way through the problem." The training phase was intense but brief. The aliens provided basic technological familiarization, but emphasized that they wanted humans to use human tactics and human thinking. The Federation's conventional approaches had failed completely against the swarm. Dr. Webb established medical protocols that combined Earth emergency medicine with alien technology. "The aliens are amazed that we perform surgery while under fire," he explained to his team. "They've never encountered a species that treats traumatic injuries as routine medical procedures." Colonel Chen organized the force into mixed specialty teams. Each unit contained soldiers, medics, engineers, and survival specialists. "We're not just going to fight," she told her assembled force. "We're going to do what humans do best: adapt, survive, and protect others." The alien scout ship that had been waiting near Mars finally received permission to approach Earth. The vessel was beautiful but fragile-looking, clearly built by beings who didn't expect to face hostile environments. When the alien ambassador emerged, humanity got their first look at the beings they'd be helping. Zilith was tall, crystalline, and moved with the careful grace of someone who had never faced physical danger. She communicated through a translation device that converted her light-based language into human speech. "Your species is not what we expected," Zilith admitted during the first diplomatic meeting. "We expected larger beings, more obviously predatory. But your psychological profiles indicate extreme aggression and survival capabilities." Colonel Chen smiled. "We're not aggressive. We're persistent. There's a difference." The alien technology that was provided to equip the human force was impressive but came with warnings. "These weapons are more powerful than anything your species has encountered," Zilith explained. "Please be careful." Morrison examined the energy weapons with professional interest. "Do they overheat? What's the failure rate in extreme conditions? Can they be field repaired?" The alien engineer accompanying Zilith looked confused. "Why would you use them in extreme conditions? Combat should be conducted in controlled environments." The human force exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand why the Federation was losing this war. As the expeditionary force prepared for departure, families gathered to say goodbye. These weren't just soldiers leaving for war. These were humanity's first representatives to the galaxy. They carried with them not just weapons and medical supplies, but the hopes and fears of an entire species. The transport ships provided by the Federation were modified to accommodate human environmental needs. Artificial gravity was adjusted to Earth normal. Atmospheric composition was carefully calibrated. Food synthesizers were programmed with human nutritional requirements. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Colonel Chen addressed her force one final time. "We're not just going to war. We're going to show the galaxy what humans are capable of. We're going to save lives, protect the innocent. I can prove that sometimes the best warriors are those who fight not because they love." The Federation staging area at Proxima Station was in chaos when the human fleet arrived. Refugee ships from dozens of species crowded the docking bays, while military vessels prepared for what many believed would be hopeless last stands. The humans emerged from their transport ships to stares of curiosity and barely concealed fear. Admiral Thane greeted Colonel Chen at the main docking bay. His massive granite-like form towered over the human officer, but his voice carried undertones of desperation. "Colonel Chen, your timing is critical. We've just received word that Kepler 442c is under active swarm assault. 50,000 civilians are trapped in the capital city." Chen studied the tactical display that Admiral Thane activated. The planet showed red zones spreading from multiple landing sites, with blue zones indicating Federation forces in retreat. "What's the evacuation situation?" "Impossible," replied Captain Veltar, a nervous Altarian officer. The swarm has adapted to our transport protocols. They target our evacuation ships first. We've lost 6 vessels trying to reach the surface. Dr. Webb stepped forward, examining the medical data streaming from the planet. What about the civilian casualties? We estimate 70% casualties in the affected zones, Captain Veltar replied. Our medical teams cannot operate in active combat zones. It's simply too dangerous, the human team exchanged glances. Morrison pulled up environmental data on his portable scanner. Atmosphere is breathable with minor filtration. Gravity is 0.8 Earth normal. Temperature range is within acceptable parameters. He looked at Chen. It's actually pretty mild by Earth standards. Captain Veltar's translator struggled with the human concept of considering a war zone mild, but Admiral Thane understood immediately. You're saying you can operate in those conditions? We're saying we specialize in those conditions, Chen replied. What kind of support can you provide? We can get you to orbit, but landing in contested zones is... Admiral Thane paused. No Federation force has successfully landed in a swarm-controlled area and survived. Tech Sergeant Anderson examined the swarm tactical data. Their defensive patterns look like urban warfare scenarios. Overlapping fields of fire, use of cover, adaptive responses to threats. He grinned. Basically, they fight like humans. This comparison disturbed the Federation officers, but the human team found it encouraging. If the swarm fought like humans, then humans would know how to fight them. The mission briefing took place aboard the Federation flagship. The holographic display showed Kepler 442c with swarm forces controlling 60% of the planetary surface. The crystalline creatures had established hive structures throughout the major cities, with smaller forces spreading into rural areas. The civilian population is concentrated in underground shelters beneath the capital city, explained Dr. Melandre, her tentacles moving in distress patterns. But the swarm is actively hunting them. Our projections suggest complete civilian elimination within 48 hours. Colonel Chen studied the terrain maps. What about the tunnel systems? Can we use them for movement? The tunnels are compromised, Captain Veltar replied. Swarm forces have breached multiple levels. No Federation force would attempt to navigate them. Morrison looked up from his environmental scanner. Define compromised. Are we talking about partial collapse, hostile occupation, or atmospheric contamination? All 3, Dr. Melandre replied. The swarm has deliberately destabilized the tunnel network to prevent evacuation. There are cave-ins, hostile creatures, and toxic atmospheric conditions. The human team looked at each other and grinned. Morrison had spent years in cave rescue operations. Anderson was an expert in urban warfare. Dr. Webb had performed surgery in collapsed buildings during earthquake relief operations. So it's Tuesday, quipped Sergeant Martinez, the team's demolitions expert. The Federation officers didn't understand the human humor, but they recognized confidence when they saw it. The insertion plan was simple by human standards and insane by Federation standards. Instead of trying to establish a secure landing zone, the humans would drop directly into contested areas using individual atmospheric entry pods. They would split into small teams, navigate the compromised tunnel systems, locate civilian populations, and establish evacuation routes. This plan has a projected survival rate of less than 12%, Admiral Thane warned. That seems optimistic, Morrison replied, checking his gear. Most of our jobs on Earth have worse odds than that. The Federation provided the humans with their standard military equipment, but the humans also brought their own gear. Climbing equipment, emergency medical supplies, demolition charges, and survival tools that looked primitive by galactic standards, but had been tested in the worst conditions Earth could provide. Dr. Webb's medical kit was particularly disturbing to Federation observers. Why do you carry so many trauma supplies? Asked Dr. Melandre. Because people get hurt in dangerous situations, Webb replied, checking his portable surgical tools. And someone has to fix them. The concept of performing emergency surgery in active combat zones was completely foreign to Federation medical thinking. Their doctors worked in sterile, secure environments, with extensive support staff and perfect conditions. The atmospheric insertion went better than expected. The swarm forces were designed to intercept large Federation vessels, not individual human-sized pods. Most of the human teams reached the surface safely, though 3 pods were damaged during landing. Team Alpha, led by Colonel Chen, landed in the industrial district where swarm forces had established a major hive complex. The crystalline structures were beautiful, but clearly designed for efficiency rather than aesthetics. Swarm creatures moved through the area in organized patterns, searching for remaining humans. "Contact in 30 seconds, whispered Sergeant Collins, the team's forward observer. "Multiple hostile units moving in search formation." Chen made quick hand signals to her team. Instead of engaging the swarm forces directly, they would use urban warfare tactics to avoid detection while moving toward the civilian shelters. The first engagement came when Team Beta encountered swarm forces in a collapsed section of the tunnel system. The crystalline creatures were larger than expected, with adaptive armor plating and energy weapons that could cut through Federation materials. "They're tough, but they fight like they've never faced guerrilla tactics," reported Morrison over the communication link. His team was using climbing gear to navigate through tunnel sections that the swarm had written off as impassable. Tech Sergeant Anderson's team made the first major discovery. "The swarm creatures are vulnerable to kinetic impact weapons," he reported after successfully eliminating a patrol using human-designed explosives. "Their energy shields don't adapt to good old-fashioned boom." This information spread quickly through the human force. The Federation's energy weapons were sophisticated but predictable. Human explosive devices were crude but effective, especially when used in ways the swarm hadn't encountered before. Dr. Webb's team reached the first civilian shelter 3 hours after insertion. The conditions were worse than expected. Multiple injuries, contaminated water, failing life support systems. The Federation medical supplies were designed for perfect conditions, but Webb's trauma kit was designed for disasters. "I need to operate now," Webb told his team, examining a critically injured Altarian civilian. "Right here, right now, with swarm forces 20 meters above us." His team set up a perimeter while Webb performed emergency surgery, using a combination of Federation medical technology and human trauma protocols. The Federation civilians watched in amazement as the human doctor worked calmly, while explosions echoed through the tunnels above. The evacuation operation developed into a complex underground campaign. Human teams established secure routes through sections of tunnel that Federation forces had considered impossible to navigate. They used rock climbing techniques to access areas that were supposed to be unreachable. They employed demolition charges to create new passages when existing ones were blocked. Most importantly, they adapted constantly. When the swarm blocked one route, the humans found another. When swarm forces adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. The crystalline creatures were intelligent and adaptive, but they had never faced an enemy that treated adaptation as a basic survival skill. Team Charlie made contact with the largest civilian population 6 hours into the mission. Over 2,000 Federation citizens were trapped in a deep underground complex, with swarm forces controlling all the standard access. "Routes. We can't get them out through normal evacuation procedures," reported Lieutenant Hayes, "but Morrison thinks he can create a new exit route using controlled demolitions." The plan required Morrison's team to climb through a vertical shaft that had been partially collapsed by swarm activity, then use shape charges to create a new tunnel to the surface. The work had to be done while swarm forces actively patrolled the area above. "This is insane even by human standards," Morrison reported as his team began the ascent. "But it's doable." The Federation civilians watched in silent amazement as human rescue workers performed tasks that seemed impossible. They worked in conditions that would kill most Federation species, treated danger as a routine. The tactical briefing aboard the Federation flagship revealed the true scope of what they were asking humanity to attempt. The holographic display showed the Cerberus 7 system in horrifying detail. 3 binary stars locked in gravitational chaos, with debris fields that could crush starships and radiation levels that would kill most organic life. At the center of this cosmic nightmare, the Void Swarm had built their primary hive cluster. The massive biomechanical structure was larger than most Federation space stations, bristling with defensive systems and protected by thousands of swarm vessels. "Every Federation attack has failed completely," Admiral Thane explained, his granite features showing deep fatigue. "We've lost 17 fleets attempting to assault this position. The gravitational anomalies destroy our ships before they can engage the enemy." Colonel Chen studied the tactical data with growing interest rather than horror. The gravity wells would be a problem for large vessels, but what about small craft? Impossible, replied Captain Veltar immediately. The radiation alone would kill any crew within hours. The gravitational shear would tear apart any vessel smaller than a dreadnought. Morrison was examining the environmental data on his scanner. Actually, this looks like extreme mountain climbing conditions. Dangerous, but manageable with proper equipment and techniques. The Federation officers stared at him in disbelief. Dr. Mel Andre activated her medical scanner. Human Morrison. The radiation levels in that system would deliver a fatal dose within 6 hours of exposure. How fatal? Asked Dr. Webb, checking his medical supplies. Complete cellular breakdown. Massive organ failure. Certain death. Dr. Melandre replied. Webb nodded thoughtfully. So we have 6 hours to complete the mission. That's actually more time than we usually get for emergency, surgery, and disaster zones. The human team's casual attitude toward what the Federation considered certain death was deeply disturbing to their alien allies. But Admiral Thane was desperate enough to listen to any plan that offered hope. Colonel Chen outlined her strategy using the holographic display. We don't attack the hive directly. We infiltrate it. Small teams using modified Federation shuttles, enhanced with human survival equipment. We navigate through the gravity wells using techniques developed for asteroid mining and extreme environment operations. And then what? Asked Admiral Thane. Even if you somehow reach the hive structure, it's defended by thousands of swarm creatures. Then we do what humans do best, replied Tech Sergeant Anderson, checking his demolition equipment. We go places we're not supposed to go, and we break things that aren't supposed to be broken. The plan that emerged was typically human in its audacious simplicity. Instead of fighting through the swarm's defenses, they would bypass them entirely. Small teams would infiltrate the biomechanical hive structure from multiple angles, plant high-yield explosive charges at critical structural points, and detonate them simultaneously to cause catastrophic system failure. The Federation engineers were horrified by the technical requirements. The explosive yields necessary would destroy any Federation vessel within the blast radius. How do you expect to escape? Morrison and Anderson exchanged glances. We don't, Morrison said simply. Someone has to stay behind to ensure proper detonation timing. The concept of voluntary sacrifice for mission success was completely foreign to Federation military thinking. Their tactical doctrines emphasized preservation of personnel above all other considerations. The idea that soldiers would willingly accept death to complete a mission seemed incomprehensible. Dr. Webb began preparing medical supplies for the mission, focusing on radiation treatment and emergency trauma care. If we're going into that environment, we'll need to keep the teams functional for at least 8 hours. The radiation exposure will be manageable if we can get them medical treatment immediately after extraction. What if there is no extraction? Asked Dr. Melandre. Then we make sure the mission succeeds anyway, Webb replied, sealing his medical kit. That's what humans do. The Federation provided modified shuttles equipped with enhanced shielding and human-designed environmental controls. The vessels were small enough to navigate the gravity wells, but tough enough to survive the radiation and debris fields that surrounded the swarm hive. Each shuttle carried a 5-person team, a pilot, a demolitions expert, a medical officer, a technical specialist, and a team leader. The teams trained together for 72 hours, practicing insertion techniques in simulated high radiation, high-gravity environments. Sergeant Martinez led Alpha Team, responsible for targeting the hive's primary power distribution center. Her team included Morrison as technical specialist and Dr. Webb's assistant, Corpsman Rodriguez as medical officer. Lieutenant Hayes commanded Beta Team, tasked with destroying the hive's communication array. Tech Sergeant Anderson would lead Gamma Team against the structural support systems. Colonel Chen took personal command of Delta Team, assigned to the most dangerous target, the central control nexus located at the hive's core. The approach to Cerberus 7 was a nightmare of navigation through gravitational anomalies that changed constantly as the binary stars influenced each other. Federation capital ships stayed at maximum safe distance while the human shuttles began their insertion run. Radiation levels are climbing fast, reported pilot Davies from Alpha Team, but still within acceptable parameters. Define acceptable, Admiral Thane requested from the flagship. We probably won't die from cancer for at least 6 months, Davies replied cheerfully. The Federation officers monitoring the communication channels were learning that human definitions of acceptable risk were very different from their own. The first challenge came as the shuttles entered the outer debris field. Chunks of destroyed Federation vessels, along with natural asteroids, created a constantly shifting maze of obstacles. The human pilots navigated using techniques developed for Earth's asteroid mining operations, treating the deadly debris field as an extreme sports course. Alpha Team is through the outer field, Martinez reported. Hive structure is visible. It's bigger than we expected. The swarm hive was indeed massive, a biomechanical construct that seemed to grow from the fabric of space itself. Crystalline formations jutted out in impossible angles, while organic-looking tubes carried energy and materials throughout the structure. It was beautiful, alien, and obviously designed by intelligence far beyond human understanding. "Contact," called out Lieutenant Hayes as Beta Team encountered the first swarm defenders, multiple small craft moving to intercept. The swarm vessels were adapted for the extreme environment, with crystalline hulls that deflected radiation and gravity manipulation systems that allowed them to navigate the chaos around their hive. But they had never faced human pilots who treated dangerous flying conditions as normal operating procedures. The dogfight that followed took place in conditions that would have been impossible for Federation pilots. Human shuttles dove through gravity wells that should have torn them apart, used debris fields for cover, and employed evasive maneuvers that treated three-dimensional space like a mountain climbing environment. "They're not adapting to our flight patterns," reported pilot Chen from Delta Team. "I think they've never fought anyone crazy enough to fly like this." Morrison's technical analysis confirmed what the pilots suspected. The swarm vessels are optimized for fighting Federation forces. Large, predictable, following standard tactical doctrines. They don't know how to deal with small craft using extreme environment techniques. All 4 teams reached the hive structure successfully, though Beta Team lost their shuttle to swarm fire during the final approach. Lieutenant Hayes and her team made it to the hive's surface using personal maneuvering units, but they were now committed to completing their mission without extraction. The infiltration phase began as human teams used cutting tools and demolition charges to breach the hive's outer hull. The interior was a maze of organic corridors and crystalline chambers, filled with atmosphere that was barely breathable for humans. "It's like a combination of a cave system and a space station," Morrison reported as his team navigated through passages that seemed to grow and change as they moved. "The swarm has bioengineered this entire structure." Dr. Webb set up a field medical station in one of the larger chambers, preparing to treat radiation exposure and combat injuries. The Federation medical equipment worked, but he supplemented it with human trauma protocols, designed for extreme conditions tech. Sergeant Anderson's team reached their target. First, the massive structural supports that held the hive together in the system's chaotic gravitational environment. The supports were crystalline formations the size of skyscrapers, clearly grown rather than built. "I can bring these down," Anderson reported, examining the support structures. "But I'll need to plant charges at multiple levels simultaneously. The detonation sequence will have to be perfect or the whole thing won't work." The work was dangerous even by human standards. Anderson's team had to climb through zero-gravity conditions while wearing radiation suits, placing explosive charges at precise locations throughout the crystalline matrix. One mistake would either fail to destroy the supports or cause premature detonation. Alpha Team encountered heavy resistance as they approached the power distribution center. Swarm creatures had detected the intrusion and were converging on the human positions. Martinez, the victory celebration at Proxima Station, was unlike anything in Federation history. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to honor the human force that had accomplished the impossible, the complete destruction of the Void Swarm's central command structure. But the humans themselves seemed more interested in treating their wounded and mourning their dead than celebrating their victory. Colonel Chen stood before the assembled dignitaries, her uniform still bearing scorch marks from the mission. The weight of command and loss showed in her eyes as she delivered her after-action report. "The swarm's central hive is destroyed," she began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Our analysis indicates that individual swarm groups are now operating independently, making them vulnerable to conventional Federation tactics. The immediate threat to core Federation worlds has been eliminated." High Counselor Vexahai stepped forward, her crystalline features reflecting the station's lights. Colonel Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Federation, we offer our deepest gratitude. Your species has saved countless billions of lives. Chen nodded respectfully. We lost good people accomplishing this mission. Lieutenant Hayes, Morrison, Tech Specialist Williams, and 7 others gave their lives to ensure the mission's success. They died protecting people they had never met, from species they had barely encountered. That's what humans do. The Federation representatives were still struggling to understand human concepts of sacrifice and duty. To them, the idea of dying for strangers seemed incomprehensible, but they had witnessed the results firsthand. Dr. Webb emerged from the medical bay where he had been treating both human casualties and Federation civilians injured during recent swarm attacks. His surgical techniques, developed for Earth's emergency conditions, had revolutionized Federation medical thinking. I've been working with Dr. Melandre on new trauma protocols, Webb announced. The Federation's medical procedures are excellent for routine care, but they're not designed for emergency conditions. We're developing hybrid protocols that combine Federation technology with human emergency medicine. The implications were staggering. Federation medical teams had always withdrawn from dangerous areas, leaving casualties until conditions were safe. The human approach of treating injuries during active emergencies could save millions of lives across Federation space. Admiral Thane activated a holographic display showing the current galactic situation. Swarm forces are in retreat across 17 sectors. Without central coordination, they're fighting as individual units. Our conventional forces are achieving success rates above 80% in direct engagements. The tactical revolution was already spreading throughout Federation military units. Human combat techniques, small unit tactics, adaptive strategies, willingness to operate in dangerous conditions were being studied and implemented by Federation officers who had never imagined such approaches were possible. Colonel Chen examined the strategic display. The swarm isn't defeated. They're just disorganized. Individual hive groups will eventually establish new command structures. You need to eliminate them before they can adapt. Captain Veltar, who had initially been skeptical of human capabilities, stepped forward. Colonel, we would be honored if your forces would assist in the final campaign against the remaining swarm groups. Chen looked around at her surviving team members. They were exhausted, injured, and mourning their losses. But they were also professional soldiers who understood the mission wasn't complete. We'll help, she said simply. But we do this our way. No more massive fleet engagements, no more predictable tactics. We hunt them down using small unit operations and eliminate them before they can regroup. The campaign that followed became known as the Swarm War, though most of the fighting was done by mixed human Federation teams, using tactics that would have been considered impossible before first contact. Human advisors taught Federation forces how to operate in dangerous environments, how to adapt quickly to changing conditions, and how to accept calculated risks to achieve strategic objectives. Dr. Webb established the first interspecies emergency medical corps, training Federation doctors in battlefield surgery and emergency trauma care. The cultural exchange was challenging. Many Federation species had never conceived of medical procedures being performed under hostile conditions. You perform surgery while people are shooting at you, observed Dr. Melandre during one training session. This seems psychologically impossible. Someone has to, Webb replied, demonstrating emergency procedures on a training dummy. People get hurt in dangerous situations. If you wait for safe conditions, they die. The medical revolution spread throughout Federation space as doctors learned that emergency care could be provided in conditions they had previously considered impossible. Disaster response improved dramatically as medical teams learned to operate in unstable environments. Morrison's replacement, Master Sergeant Kelly Rodriguez, established survival training programs for Federation forces. The courses were adapted from Earth's extreme environment training, modified for the various atmospheric and gravitational conditions found throughout Federation space. Your species considers this basic survival training, observed a Zephyrian officer during a simulated cave rescue exercise. We consider it advanced special operations. Rodriguez grinned. That's because you've never had to survive on Earth. When your homeworld is trying to kill you every day, everywhere else seems easy. The psychological impact of human integration was as significant as the tactical innovations. Federation species began to understand that survival wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about facing danger with preparation, courage, and mutual support. The final swarm stronghold was eliminated 6 months after the destruction of the central hive. The operation was conducted by a joint Human Federation task force using integrated tactics that combined the best of both approaches. Federation technology provided the tools, while human techniques provided the strategy. As the last swarm vessel was destroyed, Admiral Thane addressed the combined fleet. The Void swarm threat has been eliminated. The galaxy is safe. This victory belongs to all of us. But it was made possible by our human allies who showed us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of fear. The post-war negotiations were complex. The Federation wanted to reward humanity for their service, but they were also somewhat afraid of what humans might do with advanced galactic technology. The human approach to problem-solving, direct, aggressive, and willing to accept high risks, was effective but unsettling to species that preferred cautious, consensus-based solutions. Earth's representatives, led by Secretary General Rodriguez, negotiated from a position of strength but with clear intentions. "We don't want to conquer the galaxy," she explained to the High Council. "We want to be part of it, but on equal terms." The final agreement established humanity as a full Federation member with autonomous status. Earth would maintain its own military forces and governmental structure, while participating in galactic defense and emergency response operations. Human colonies would be established throughout Federation space, but always with the understanding that humans specialized in dangerous environments and emergency situations. The Human Emergency Response Corps became a permanent Federation institution. When disasters struck, natural or artificial, human teams were the first to respond. They worked in conditions that other species couldn't survive, using techniques that other species couldn't imagine. Dr. Webb was appointed as the first human medical advisor to the Federation Health Council. His protocols for emergency medicine became standard throughout Federation space, saving lives that would have been lost under previous medical procedures. Colonel Chen established the Joint Species Tactical Academy, where Federation officers learned human combat techniques, while humans learned galactic strategy and technology. The cultural exchange was challenging but productive, creating military leaders who understood both aggressive human tactics and careful Federation planning. The memorial ceremony for the humans lost during the Swarm War was held on Earth, with representatives from every Federation species in attendance. The monument listed not just the human casualties, but all the Federation civilians and military personnel who had died fighting the swarm. "They didn't die for Earth," Chen said during the dedication ceremony. "They died for the principle that free people have the right to exist without fear. That's worth fighting for. That's worth dying for." The cultural impact of human integration continued to spread throughout Federation space. Species that had evolved past their aggressive phases began to rediscover concepts like courage, sacrifice, and determined resistance to impossible odds. Not all of them became warriors, but they all learned that sometimes survival required more than just avoiding danger. Earth's children grew up knowing they were part of a galactic civilization, but they also grew up with the knowledge that their species had earned its place through courage and sacrifice. Human colonies throughout Federation space became known as places where people went when they needed help with impossible problems. The galaxy had asked for warriors to fight the Void Swarm. Earth had provided something more.